If her and her husband were still married, everything was still going well with them, I would never even hear about this. But I also see where she's coming from because she wants her son to have a father. And if he is my son, I want to be his father. I want to be involved in his life.
I'm just hurting for him because I want him to be there for him.
And if I'm his father, I will be there for him.
Believe me, this is a case like no other. Ms. Johnson dragged the defendant, Mr. Rice, to court because she believed that he was the father of her child. She claimed he had never met her child before, and that made her beyond furious. This was how she opened her case in the courtroom.
Ms. Johnson, you have summoned the defendant to court today to prove that he fathered your 6-month-old son, Jeremiah.
Yes, Your Honor.
You are furious that he never met your baby and plan to prove paternity today. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Since he was born, he wasn't at the hospital or nothing like that. He hasn't been there since I was 2 months pregnant, actually.
Mr. Rice, you haven't seen the baby not once? You haven't come to see the baby once?
No, Your Honor.
Well, you had Mr. Rice. He claimed to have some serious doubts about the child's paternity. But first, Judge Lauren wanted to know how they got together and what kind of relationship they had. Ms. Johnson took the floor and told the judge that it all started when she broke up with her ex.
Okay, back in, I want to say June, the end of June, me and my boyfriend, we broke up and I was in my feelings. So I took comfort in Mr. Rice. And we were friends prior to that, but it went further than expected. We had sex and I found out I was pregnant in September.
Well, at least they both agreed that they had feelings for each other in the beginning. The question now is, how did it go from being so sweet to having paternity doubts? After messing about and kicking it in bed, Ms. Johnson found out she was pregnant.
I had just a regular doctor's appointment. I wasn't feeling good, and when I got in there, she said, she was like, Ms. Johnson, you're pregnant. And I was like, what? She was like, you're pregnant. And at first I was in shock. Like, I was freaking out, like, okay, I'm pregnant. And me and Mr. Rice had already talked about, he said he wanted kids, and I didn't think it was a problem. I thought he would be happy that I was pregnant. He was happy.
Ms. Johnson was the one who called off things. Anyway, after hearing her side of the story, the judge turned to Mr. Rice and asked him to give his account of how things really went down. He began his story by saying this to the judge.
First?
Yes, I was excited about it until she decided to tell me it could be her ex's baby or it could be my baby.
So tell me the story. Tell me exactly what happened. She comes to you. How does she tell you that she's pregnant?
First of all, I had left my phone in my brother's car. I was at school.
Okay.
And he came and told me about it. And then I got on the phone with her and she told me.
So how did he tell you it was on your phone?
Because she was calling my phone.
Oh, she was calling.
I messaged his friend.
That explains why he was initially very excited to be the father of the child. Now, when they went for one of Ms. Johnson's appointments, Ms. Johnson was told that she had an STD. It gets even crazier after that. The following day, the doctor reached out to Mr. Rice and told him he did not have an STD.
Well, we go on, I go to about one doctor's appointment with her. And after that, she tells me she has an STD. I say, okay. So I go to the doctor, I get checked, I take the medicine. But the doctor calls me the next day and tells me, sir, you don't have an STD at all.
That doesn't make sense to me at all, Your Honor, because
if it doesn't make sense,
I wasn't having sex with anybody but him during the time. So there was no way that he didn't have it because I wasn't sleeping with anybody else.
That reply sounds very suspicious. Why would you just say you didn't cheat out of the blues? Ms. Johnson is definitely hiding something. Even with that revelation, she claimed she had not slept with anyone except Mr. Rice. As you would expect, he did not believe her.
That means she was cheating already.
I haven't cheated on him. I haven't been with anybody else but Mr. Rice.
But it doesn't make sense, because right after we broke up, maybe a week or two later, she was right back with her ex.
But he knew that. He knew that I wanted to be with my ex. He knew, because I told him, I don't have feelings for you like that. I mean, I care about you, but I don't love, I'm not in love with you. So I went back to my ex because that's what my heart was.
With that answer, it's pretty obvious Ms. Johnson has some secrets she's hiding. Mr. Rice believed the baby belonged to her ex because she claimed she still wanted to be with him. He also told the judge that the dates of the conception just did not add up. Take a look.
Because when she told me she was a month pregnant, it was in October. But if she was a month pregnant in October, the baby was supposed to be born in June. The baby was born in April.
Oh, so what you're saying is the timeline was off from the conception date she gave you.
Yeah, she told me at the beginning, when she goes to the doctor and find out how long she is, whether she's 2 months or 1 month, if she was 2 months pregnant, it will be James' baby.
Well, Ms. Johnson sure has a lot of explaining to do, that's for sure. Now, to her surprise, Ms. Johnson's ex was in the courtroom, ready to tell his own side of the story. When he walked up to the podium, this was what he told the judge.
When we got back together like September, I've been there since day one. Like doctor's appointments, changing pampers and everything.
Mr. Rice believes that you and Ms. Johnson were still sleeping together during the time they were sleeping together because she admitted she got an STD and he did not have it.
Yes.
So did you have one that you could pass to her?
No, ma'am, because we had took a test too and I didn't have it.
You did not have it?
Yes.
Even the ex-boyfriend did not have the STD. So, Ms. Johnson, where did it come from? The mind-blowing thing here was that the ex-boyfriend also believed he was the father of the child, and that only made Mr. Rice's doubts grow.
Do you still in the back of your mind think that way, despite what she tells you?
Yes, ma'am.
You do?
Yes, ma'am.
So you think this is your biological child?
Yes, ma'am.
And so, Mr. Rice, I can imagine that only furthers your doubt hearing this testimony, even if you've never heard it before.
It does. So I said, okay, she said you should come tomorrow on a Saturday. This was a Friday when he was born. So I called myself while I was still at work. The DNA test people were in the building on that Friday. They would not be there on that Saturday.
Wow. First, she had no idea where the STD came from, and now she's ghosting the DNA test. Oh, she is guilty, all right. Anyway, it's time to reveal the results. Let's see if more surprises are waiting to pop out.
Pertaining to whether Mr. Williams or Mr. Rice is the father of 6-month-old Jeremiah Johnson, it has been determined by this court the biological father is Mr. Rice. You are the father. How does it feel to know for certain?
I feel better.
Mr. Angelari was in court, furious as a hungry lion. He had an affair with a married woman and now believes he is the father of her child. Ms. Vargas, on the other hand, claims he can't be the father, and that just got on Judge Lauren's nerves. He stated his case by saying this.
Mr. Angelari, you claim the defendant, Ms. Vargas, was married and having an affair with you when she got pregnant.
Yes, Your Honor, that's correct.
Now, you say she initially told you that you were not the father of her 11-month-old son, but then dropped the bomb that the child was indeed yours.
That is correct. Your Honor.
After her marriage was over.
That is correct.
At least one fact has been established. They weren't in a relationship. Ms. Vargas needed a shoulder to cry on, and Mr. Angelari was her perfect subject. But things were about to get very intense. Mr. Angelari claimed that all he wanted to do was be there for Ms. Vargas when her relationship with her husband was rocky.
One night, we ended up back at my place. We'd been at the club, we got turned up. We're out there doing our thing. We went to the house, started doing our thing.
Our thing,
Yeah.
Your Honor. That night when we, had sexual intercourse, you planned to get me pregnant. I feel like you did.
Oh, no, that's a...
I realize that you may hear some things that will evoke intense emotion.
Isn't that just cute? One would even think they were in a beautiful relationship with the way they spoke about each other. Moving on, when Ms. Vargas found out she was pregnant, she told Mr. Angelari that he was the father. After a while, she decided she wanted to work things out with her husband, and that's when her entire story changed.
She told me the baby was mine, and the next thing you know, she's telling me it's her husband.
I wanted to work things out with my husband, Your Honor. I wanted to do
You
it for him.
gotta face reality.
So when you first found out you were pregnant, Ms. Vargas, did you call Mr. Angelari and say this child is yours?
Yes, Your Honor.
So you told him it was his.
I first did.
Then you decided I want to try to work this out with my husband, so you tell your husband that it's his.
There could be a chance that it was his.
Another lie.
Looks like her decision to want to work things out with her husband blew up in her face. While trying to work things out with her husband, she told Mr. Angelari that she needed some space and time to figure out a way, but Mr. Angelari just couldn't get the thought of being the child's father out of his head.
You asked him to give you some space because you're trying to work this out with your
Yes, Your
husband.
Honor.
I moved away anyhow.
You respected that to a certain extent, but in your mind you knew that you could possibly
Well,
have a child.
I had a gut feeling, so come September-ish is when I contacted her husband and her, saying, you know what, reality, whether you dislike me, whether you like me, you need to let me know if this is my child when the kid is born. She never told me when he was born. I heard from people around town.
They aren't wrong about that, though, as the child needs to know who to call daddy and mummy. Even with both of them agreeing that they want to do right by the kid, Mr. Angelari claimed that he felt it in his gut that Ms. Vargas was trying to be shady with him and her husband. Here's why he felt that way.
Yes, because the first few months, she's telling me I'm the dad. Then I end up getting a job up north. She told me, well, I want to try to work things out with my husband. I don't want him to try to get me for adultery or have anything happen with my children. I said, well, I can respect that. Do your thing. I moved up to Austin. She still lived down in Temple. I was 45 minutes away. I didn't talk to her. One of my friends that lived down in the same area told me, oh, she's getting big. She's ready to pop. So then come September, My conscience is really wearing on me like,
If there is anything these guys are good at doing, trust me, it's arguing. Now, Mr. Angileri felt the only reason Miss Vargas was coming back to him was because things did not work out for her and her husband. And most importantly, she didn't want her child growing up without a father.
I believe if her and her husband were still married, everything was still going well with them, I would never even hear about this. But I also see where she's coming from because she wants her son to have a father. And if he is my son, I want to be his father. I want to be involved in his life.
And I want you to be involved. I want you to be there. I'm just hurting for him because I want him to be there for him.
And if I'm his father, I will be there for him.
Well, something definitely smells fishy about her story. First, she wants Mr. Angileri to be the father of her child, but she initially threatened to put a restraining order on him. Come on, Ms. Vargas. Something isn't right. Mr. Angileri had some evidence to back up his accusation, and here's what he showed the judge.
These are messages that say, I need you to give away your rights. I hope you stay away and never come around. I will put a restraining order on you.
What kind of mother does that when you think that's the father?
What had he done to warrant a restraining order?
Nothing, Your Honor.
So this is just angry
It's
talk.
just being angry. I mean, he wasn't there. He would always make excuses saying, oh, I can't send you money. One time, he said he was gonna send me money. I waited at Walmart for him to send the money.
From her tone, Judge Lauren is starting to lose her cool, trust me. One of the reasons Ms. Vargas changed her mind was that she claimed that as the baby got older, she noticed that he started to look like Mr. Angileri. But did Mr. Angileri feel the same way about the child?
As she did until the kid was 6 months old, 5 months old. Why couldn't you get a hold of me then?
I felt like he was starting to look more like you, and I wanted you to be there.
Do you think he looks like me now?
Yes.
Because my other 2 kids resemble me, spitting image.
Of course, he's gonna look like the mother too. It's not just gonna be you.
Well, yeah, that's understandable, but I don't see many of my traits.
I guess we know why he wants to be part of the baby's life if he ends up being the father of the child. Anyway, enough drama and testing Judge Lauren's anger. The results are in, and it's time we find out who the real father of the child is.
Mr. Angileri, you are the father.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's all I've wanted. Like you said, everybody makes mistakes, but it's all about how you come out of it.
Everything about this case was just wrong. Mr. Kiesel was in court, claiming that the results would either break or save his marriage. After his wife told him that there was a chance he might not be the father of their child, he dragged her to court with the hopes of proving that he was the father. He began his case like this.
So you say your marriage depends on today's paternity results after your wife announced that the child she is currently pregnant with may not be yours. You are here to prove you are the father and save your family. Is that correct?
Yes, your marriage has been put on the line. A month into our marriage, she had cheated on me, and it led to where I might not be the father of this child.
Just 1 month into the marriage, and she already cheated on him? Now, that's wild. Without wasting any time, the judge asked Mrs. Kiesel what in the world made her cheat on her husband just 1 month into their marriage. This was her explanation.
Wedding day.
We really rushed into a relationship. We had been dating on and off, but it was back and forth with my ex and him. We both have broke up a couple of times over while we were dating. And then when we got married, it just was kind of like a let's go do this kind of thing. It was like, let's do it today. So we did, and I just feel like we might have got married a little too young.
Now, that is just disappointing to hear. A couple of weeks after she had cheated on her husband, she found out she was pregnant. Mrs. Kiesel claimed that she and her husband were trying to have a baby, and when the test came out positive, they were both excited.
And I happened to take one, and it was positive. And at first I was really, happy and excited. And then just a couple seconds later, it hit me that I'm about to have to tell him something, no husband wants to hear.
So you found out you were pregnant first, and then you knew you had to tell your husband.
Yes.
Because you knew there was a possibility this other man could also be, your ex could be the child's biological father.
Your Honor.
One can only imagine how heartbreaking the news must have been when Mr. Kiesel found out. Well, you are about to find out. After Mrs. Kiesel was done telling her side of the story, she asked Mr. Kiesel to tell his side, and this was what he said to the judge.
It was crushing. We'd been trying for a while, and she was in the bathroom. She walked out crying and told me she was pregnant, and I asked why she was crying, and she told me that there's a possibility that I might not be the father. And that's just, I broke down myself, and it was heartbreaking that this thing that was supposed to be great, we'd been trying, we finally got it, and I might not even be the father of it.
You can't argue with the judge on that one. Those dates are too close. Despite the dates being close to each other and the fact that she actually cheated on him, Mr. Kiesel still believed he was the father of the baby, and he gave his reason by saying,
The child's father.
I do, Your Honor.
Tell the court why.
We have a nose that looks a lot alike. Mine goes down and then bubbles at the end, and with the ultrasounds that we had, the child had the same kind of nose.
You believe by looking at this ultrasound, it appears that you have a similar nose to the child.
And we have fat upper lips. I see it in the ultrasound as well.
For her sake, let's pray Mr. Kiesel ends up being the father of her child. Mr. Kiesel told the judge that he believed the baby looked like him because he saw similar features he had on the baby during an ultrasound.
Honestly, I have a cleft chin, and in some of the pictures, it's a little hard to see, but it's a very dominant trait. And I was born with bilateral clubfoot, and my father was, and my two brothers were as well, so it seems to run in my family. Whenever we were going through ultrasounds and having that done, it actually looked like his feet might have had some deformities in it as well.
Moving on, the judge decided to bring in an expert to explain if the features Mr. Kiesel saw in the baby were actually the same features he had. Even after the expert gave her explanation, Mr. Kiesel was still convinced he was the father of the child.
Sure, see it. At about 20 weeks, we do an anatomic scan of the fetus, and we look for abnormalities. So from the picture that we've seen, the still shot, the 2D shot of the foot, it's not possible to tell yes or no.
Because the court did give you the scans we received, and you were able to review those.
Correct.
Well, there's no need to beat around the bush. The results are in, and the truth about the paternity of the child is about to be revealed. Who is the father of the child?
Mr. Kiesel, you are the father. I know that has to feel good.
A little bit.
How's it feel, sir?
Amazing.
I'm so happy for you. And I know those are tears of joy.
In this case, Ms. Moody was present in court to prove to the defendant, Mr. Brackens, that he was the father of her 2-year-old daughter. She hoped that the result would save her family, and they could go on to live happily ever after. Their case began with her saying, you could see it in her eyes. Her family meant everything to her. So how did they go from having a beautiful family and almost getting married to doubting the paternity of the child? Ms. Moody took the floor and told the judge that she was mostly to blame for the mess.
Ms. Moody, you have petitioned the court for a DNA test to prove that the defendant is the father of your 2-year-old daughter, Raylan. You hope these results will save your family. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Brackens, you say the plaintiff admitted to sleeping with another man, and your doubt is overwhelming. But if the DNA results shock you, you'd consider staying together. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
Well, you heard Ms. Moody. She claimed she wasn't getting all the physical attention she wanted, and so she kicked it in bed with another man. The crazy thing was that even when Mr. Brackens came back, she was still kicking it in bed with the other man.
After graduating high school, we lost, went our separate ways. He went to school, I went to school, and when we caught back up, Anthony was away, he was out of town for a while, and we were contacting each other over social media. And just through social media messages and conversations, I was literally head over heels for him off top. I fell in love with this man.
She had a double life. Looks like she's about to pay the consequences for that. Ms. Moody never mentioned any of it to Mr. Brackens. When asked how he found out she was cheating on him, this was how he broke it down to the judge.
When Mr. Brackens came back in town, I continued to entertain this other man for several weeks.
Mr. Brackens, did you have any idea this was going on?
Your Honor, the whole time I was away, it felt like we were in a committed relationship. It felt like it was one-on-one together the whole time we were together. And I come back home and it was someone else. And
moving on, after running her sexual escapades with both Mr. Brackens and the other guy, Ms. Moody found out she was pregnant a week after she broke things off with the other guy. She claimed she felt really bad for hurting Mr. Brackens and was willing to do anything to make it right.
So how soon after you broke up with the other man did you find out you were pregnant?
A week and a half.
Okay. So the doubt is real.
The doubt is very real.
Yes.
I praise this man for being there from day one because he's knew ever since then, the day that he gave me the ultimatum to be with him or to be with this other man. And I chose him. Even though I had done so much garbage, he didn't hold it against me. He respected that enough that I was okay.
Mr. Brackens must really love Ms. Moody and still want to stay with her after all she did. After Ms. Moody had taken a pregnancy test, the results came out positive, and the moment Mr. Brackens learned about the results, he immediately felt the baby could be for the other guy.
She went in my bathroom, took the pregnancy test. I busted in on her. She tells me it's positive, she's pregnant. So instantly, I'm like, in my head, I'm thinking, okay, maybe it could be another guy, but I take it upon myself. I want this kid to be mine. This is my kid. I'm not worried about this other guy.
And yet, despite your devotion, your doubt still kept creeping in.
With those tears dropping from his face, you can tell Mr. Brackens is beyond hurt. Even with all that had been said in the courtroom, Ms. Moody still claimed she was 100% certain that the baby belonged to Mr. Brackens.
To me and so many other people, she looks just like him to me. And I hope it's not my feelings, my emotions getting in the way of that. But it's also because when I look at my daughter, I see him. I don't see me, I see him. Her little attitude, her little sassiness. It is Mr. Brackens to a T. It's not just me going off of my own faith and what I want. It's my child's actions as well.
Looks like she didn't want the other guy anywhere near her child. Anyway, the wait is over. Let's bring this heartbreaking story to a close. After all that had been said, this was the verdict Judge Lauren gave.
Mr. Brackens, you are her father. How does it feel, Mr. Brackens, to look at your beautiful little girl with no doubt in your mind, not another thought?
It's amazing, Your Honor.
Mr. Brackens, you have done an amazing thing for this child.